How's it going, everyone? Today I wanted to talk about the infinite loop problem that we have in Python. Many languages have dedicated keywords for creating infinite loops in programs. Like in Rust, you can just write loop. Some other languages also have a feature called do while, which runs the code first before checking the condition of the while loop, and this ensures that the code is executed at least once in the loop. In Java, it looks like this. But in Python, we do not have any of these things. So we're going to look at the best practices and alternatives for creating infinite loops in Python. Now, before we begin, I'd just like to thank Zed for sponsoring this video. Zed is a lightning-fast code editor written in Rust, and I've been using it to do all my coding for a while now. If you feel like trying out Zed, I've left a link in the description box down below where you can download it for free. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Let's start by talking about how we can create an infinite loop in Python. To create an infinite loop, we just need to provide a fixed truthy value. For readability, I'd recommend using the true boolean. But you can honestly use any truthy value and it will create an infinite loop, since it contains a condition which will always evaluate to true, and which cannot be changed since we hard-coded the value in the condition. I've even seen code on GitHub that uses an integer for infinite looping. Apparently, according to a quick Google search, this approach was much more optimized and led to a considerable improvement in code execution in Python 2. In Python 3, this is no longer an optimization. So I imagine some devs still do it for nostalgia or because they didn't read the docs for the past 20 years. But continuing with the truthy values, even a string would work just fine here. As you can see, if we were to run this, it would run the loop indefinitely. But to keep it simple and readable, in modern Python, I just recommend using while true. There's nothing wrong with this approach if you truly want to achieve infinite loop-like behavior. Although you'll encounter some devs that highly disagree with this approach, and that recommend using an external variable to manage the state of the while loop. For example, they might have some sort of condition, which will initially be set to true, and here they will use the condition to control the while loop. If you find this makes your program more readable, feel free to use this approach. Personally, I don't really like this approach because we've added a small layer of complexity to our while loop. We now have a condition variable that we need to track the entire time. And this also adds to the total execution time since Python has to perform extra lookup logic for that variable. And there's other extra work that it has to do as well. The extra execution time may be insignificant depending on what you're trying to achieve with your program. To show you what I mean, we're going to import timeit. And then we're going to create the setup variable and the two kinds of loops, one which uses the condition and the other one that uses true. Below that, we will run each one of these snippets 100 million times. And finally, we will print the results. As soon as we run this, you'll notice that while true is a bit more performant. But again, this shouldn't be the reason you use while true. If you find while condition to be more readable in your script, use that. This little optimization isn't worth changing the way you write your program if you have a preference here. I mean, this optimization over here is the result of running this code 100 million times, which is a lot of times that you have to run this script just to gain that improvement. Personally, I much prefer using while true because it's straightforward and doesn't introduce any unnecessary variables. Now, where would you use an infinite loop in Python? A classic example could be in a program that waits on user input. Here we use a while true loop because theoretically we have no idea when the user will stop using our program. It could be in the next 5 minutes or the next 2 years. We have no idea how long the user wants to stay logged in and chat. Although when they want to exit, they just enter nothing, and that triggers the else block, which breaks out of the while loop. So if you're feeling pretty pedantic about the term infinite loop, no loop is truly ever going to be infinite. But the term infinite loop is a concept we choose to work with because calling it a not knowing when it will end loop is detrimental to our time and energy. We also have other options when it comes to creating an infinite loop. Some devs love using the walrus operator here. For example, we could rewrite our chatbot to look like this, and this would achieve the same thing. So if we were to remove that, run the script, test it out, tap on enter, it would work the exact same way. So there are many ways to implement an infinite loop in Python. Now, what about do while? How would we do that in Python? Well, since we do not have the built-in keywords that Java has, we'd achieve the same kind of behavior with a conditional check from within the infinite while loop. For this example, we will create a variable to keep track of, which will be called I. And on each iteration, we will print its value. And we want this code to always be executed at least once. That's why we cannot insert the condition directly after the while keyword. At the bottom, we make sure that this condition is not met. Otherwise, we break out of the while loop. Now, when we run this, we should see 6 numbers in the console. If we were to change I to 0, this code would run at least once before breaking out of the while loop. That's how we achieve do while behavior. If you're fine with the loop potentially exiting before any of the code runs, then you can easily use a condition directly after the while keyword. Although remember to change the condition here to check for greater than instead of less than. Otherwise our code won't run as expected. But right now, if we were to run this, we'd get no output, because the condition evaluated to false before we had the chance to run any of the code. To sum it up, there's no right and wrong answer here. Whether you use while true or while condition will depend solely on your use case and coding style preference. Personally, I'd never introduce a new variable into my program if it doesn't increase readability. That's why I tend to favor using while true over while condition when it comes to creating an infinite loop. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about all of this in the comment section down below. Do you have a preference, or when do you think you should use one over the other?